Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really massive, absolutely fascinating concept, and that is the underlying structures that govern our daily lives. Think about it, from the raw physical energy powering our cities, all the way to democratic blueprints and the actual institutions built to protect us, literally everything is a system. And getting a grip on how these systems work, well, it's kind of the ultimate key to understanding our world. Let's get into it. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with fueling the physical world, then move into the structures of democratic power, look closely at enforcing institutional integrity, and finally wrap up with how these systems adapt to future challenges.
All right, Section 1, Fueling the Physical World, the Macro Systems of Energy.
To really understand human power, we first have to understand physical power. And for over a century now, that's meant looking straight at the raw material that runs global industry. It all starts out on these incredibly complex offshore platforms that extract raw crude oil. When we say fuel oil, it's actually kind of a broad catch-all term for the liquid fractions we get from distilling petroleum. This stuff is the absolute lifeblood for heating our homes, generating our electricity, and powering those massive cargo ships you see. But as you might guess, it doesn't just come out of the ground ready to go.
Right, so raw crude oil, which gets pumped by major producers like the US, Russia, and the Middle East, it has to be systematically refined. It's a highly structured, almost rigid production process. First up is distillation, and that's basically separating the lighter and heavier fractions. Then comes blending, which is where they carefully adjust things like viscosity and sulfur content. Honestly, it helps to think of the whole thing like a giant, high-temperature chemistry set.
So, inside one of these fractional distillation towers, there is a literal physical hierarchy. Picture this. Crude oil is heated up to around 350 degrees Celsius before it enters the tower. The small, highly volatile molecules, the ones with low boiling points, they rise all the way to the cooler top, eventually becoming bottled gas and petrol. Meanwhile, the really large, heavy molecules, they just sink right to the bottom as residue. It's basically a perfect self-sorting system of separation.
And that physical structure completely dictates how we use it in the real world. On one hand, you have distillate fuel oils. These are your light fractions, so they're clean, thin, and perfect for domestic heating or high-speed engines. On the flip side, you've got residual fuel oils. These are the heavy, literal bottom-of-the-barrel remains. They're thick, dark, and often need to be preheated just to flow properly. That makes them the heavy hitters used for industrial boilers and massive cargo ships. The system takes one raw material and creates totally distinct products for distinct needs.
Okay, so we've seen exactly how we systematically extract, separate, and utilize physical power from the Earth. But that brings up a really fascinating pivot point. How do we structure the societal power that actually governs us as human beings?
Which brings us to Section 2, Structures of Democratic Power, the Blueprint of the U.S. Government.
Just like an oil refinery uses a massive tower to separate out the volatile elements, human societies use constitutions to separate political authority. A constitution is essentially a carefully designed blueprint. Its whole purpose is to prevent any single person or group from becoming way too powerful. Take the U.S. government, for example. It takes power and divides it into three distinct branches. You've got the legislative branch making the laws, the executive branch enforcing them, and the judicial branch checking their constitutionality. It's a highly structured system of checks and balances, refining political power so no single group becomes, well, too volatile.
But here's the catch. A blueprint is really only as good as the people who are actually using it. As our sources point out, we have to develop our creativity and our intelligence to help humanity prosper. You can't just set up three branches of government and then walk away from it. A true democratic system actually requires an intelligent, critically thinking, and highly engaged public for it to function properly. And honestly, this builds directly into our daily habits. The sources highlight George Orwell's classic novel, 1984, as a pretty powerful reminder to always stay vigilant. Successfully navigating our modern political systems, especially our digital world today, requires applying what's called the 5 C's of critical consuming. Whether you're reading an article online or listening to an audio recording, you have to actively analyze the structures of information in the exact same way you'd analyze the structures of a government.
Moving on to Section 3, Enforcing Institutional Integrity. We're taking a look inside Moldova's Anti-Corruption Center.
So, what actually happens when those societal structures we just talked about are threatened by bad actors? Well, we zoom in on institutions designed strictly to enforce the rules. What we're looking at here is the official organogram or organizational chart of Moldova's Anti-Corruption Center. And wow, it reveals an incredibly intense hierarchy. From the director all the way down to the local territorial directorates, it takes immense internal specialization to combat corruption effectively. You simply can't fight a complex, sneaky problem without a structured, complex organization of your own.
To make that incredibly dense visual hierarchy a bit more digestible, let's look at the main pillars. You have the General Directorate for Combating Corruption, the General Directorate for Criminal Investigation, and crucially, the General Directorate for Corruption Prevention. Supporting all of them are the Analytical and Logistics Directorates. Now, each one of these has a highly specific role, yet they absolutely must collaborate seamlessly to ensure a fair justice environment.
This strict, formalized hierarchy allows the institution to methodically tackle corruption step by step. First up, they investigate specific crimes right there on the ground. Second, they process massive amounts of intelligence and data through those specialized analytical directorates we mentioned. And third, they implement prevention and education programs. So it becomes this continuous, highly structured loop designed specifically to maintain systemic integrity.
And finally, Section 4, Adapting to Future Challenges, the Evolution of Systems. All right, we've looked at energy, we've looked at government, and we've explored law enforcement. But there is one universal truth about every complex system out there. Absolutely none of them are static. To survive, they all have to evolve and adapt. If we return to our initial physical energy system for a second, there is a very clear global trend happening right now, and that's a decline in fuel oil demand. Stricter environmental regulations and the very pressing realities of climate change are driving a massive structural shift toward renewable sources, like solar and wind power. The system is adapting simply because the environment demands it. And this is really what brings the whole explainer together. Change is the universal constant. Whether we're talking about the energy sector trying to reduce its carbon footprint, a nation amending its constitutional laws to actually reflect its people, or an anti-corruption agency totally reorganizing to fight modern digital financial crimes, adapting to new realities is absolutely crucial for systemic survival. Systems that don't adapt, they break. It's that simple.
I want to leave you with this final thought today. We are all deeply embedded in these incredible structures, from the fuel that heats our homes to the governments that write our laws to the institutions that protect our daily rights. The big question is, are you just a passive participant in all this, or are you actively analyzing and shaping the systems around you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer of the source material. Keep questioning the structures around you, and I'll catch you next time.